Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're back again with the latest episode of the Hardwood Nations podcast. What's going on, Bryce?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic, my man. Fantastic. So we got a few things to talk about this week. Damian Lillard has chosen Portland. How will the Lakers mesh? Is Marc Gasol set to retire? And then we're going to talk about the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame ceremony that took place last night. Did you have a good week, brother?
Yeah. I mean, my week is mostly filled with laborious work, but I mean, as went as well as it could have been expected. So yeah, I got no complaints.
Gotcha. I'm preparing for another state audit at the day job, so you can imagine how my head's been spinning all week. I have
Sounds
that
fun.
win. I have that Wednesday, so yeah, trust me. Yeah. All right. So earlier this week, Damian Lillard sent out a post on Instagram, pretty much proclaiming his love for the city of Portland, the state of Oregon. He's going to stay a Blazer for the time being. I know we've talked about this on and off a lot during the off season. How do you feel about Damian finally saying this is where I want to be?
Um, well, honestly, it's nothing new to me. That's what he's been saying this whole time, and basically what he's been saying his entire career. So, I'm not surprised by this. His his like unwillingness to stay with the team seems to escalate every year. And we've talked multiple times that it didn't make sense for him to get moved this year, despite what seemed like him not being super happy at the end of the last season and the rumors swirling after in the offseason that he for sure really didn't want to be there, even though the whole time he said that's not what he was saying. Um, but Damon said this the entire time he's been in Portland. After every season, this is what he says. But it seems like the rumors and like the openness that he is unhappy at times, it seems to get larger and more pronounced every year. And I think we'll see that more as they don't win a championship, as he's not in MVP talks. Possibly he might be. You thought I think you thought he was going to be MVP last year. You talked to him like he might be in the conversation. And then I, I'm not sure a point guard can lead his team and do everything the way Giannis proved he could do it in a way to where as a smaller market team like him, not surrounded by other superstars, can win a championship. Because I think as we come to the end of this contract with him in Portland or get closer to it, we'll start to see that he's not actually happy. He's just saying the right things right now, and he's always done that, and he's always done that with Portland, and he might mean those things, but I don't think he stays there forever. And I think as the years go on, the next 2 to 3 or the next year and a half, 2 years, we'll see more rumors and more of what we've seen the last couple of seasons. It'll just escalate. So that's fine that he's saying that, but he's always said that. It's not surprising to me at all.
I think it's going to turn into a situation similar to Dwight Howard's last couple of years in Orlando. Dame has said that he wants to stay in Portland and he doesn't want to leave. But then there was so much chatter this offseason about him wanting to be traded. I think it was some validity to that. But I think he
Mhm.
also saw that his contract wasn't, I mean, he has 3 years left on his deal. So he had no leverage in anything that he wanted to do at this moment. So I think he kind of gave in to that. So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to stay here. So of course he wanted to save face with the fan base, and that's why he released the Instagram post. But with
Mhm.
that said, as you said, in the next 2 to 3 years, it's going to ramp up again. Where okay, there's going to have to be a move where um, I think he's going to part with the Blazers at that time. But now we're talking about he's going to be 33, 34 years of age. So how much of an impact can he make at that point? He's probably going to tag along with another younger superstar. We don't know who that's going to be right now in order to try to win a championship. So that's how I kind of see it happening. Um, but I understand his frustration, and it's only going to get worse because they made some moves this all season that would indicate that they're going to move backwards versus moving forward. So
I won't be surprised if like all the other major teams who will be vying for landing Damian Lillard when that contract comes up. LeBron's going to be a few more years older. The Westbrook experiment will be either a success or over with, and they will have to look at moving forward with possibly just AD. LA Lakers, like a lot of teams, are probably already looking at, you know, acquiring him in some way, just like they
right.
do with everybody. But like he has a that's relatively close to where his home is or where he was from. So I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the Lakers are already a major suitor for him going forward because the timing it just matches up.
Yeah, it's possible because at that time LeBron's going to be heading out the door, so it is possible that he teams up with AD. Um, so yeah, that's not far fetched at all, and that's a good point that you brought up there. So not bad, but
It'd be
hopefully we can.
interesting.
Yeah, hopefully this thing will quiet down now for the next few months. But like I said, in the next couple of years, it's going to ramp back up. It has to because I think now like I said, he has no leverage. The closer it is to his contract being over with, that's where he's going to have the leverage, and that's where he can really make the move that he wants to make. So, speaking of the Lakers, they have a lot of personalities. What's your take on, because this happened since the last time we've actually had a podcast? What's your take on Rajon Rondo returning to Los Angeles Lakers? Because I know that you're a Rondo stan, so tell me how you feel about that.
Either I think the biggest X factor here is once again LeBron, who's probably the best GM in the league or one of the best GMs in the league. But also, since he's actually on the court and he's pretty much the commanding force on the court, I mean, even it's not like Rondo when he's on the court. Yes, he's the point guard, but when he plays with LeBron, everybody does what LeBron wants to do. Okay, that's just the way it goes. I don't think Westbrook's going to be any different. Um, and I think they've obviously already had some of these conversations that have to be had in the locker room. And let's not forget that Rondo came into this Lakers team the first time with it, like the impression that he and LeBron had never gotten along, just as much as him and anybody else has not gotten along. Like, kind of, you know. So it's, I think when there's actual championships at stake and when LeBron James is involved, um, I think it kind of drowns out some of the extra chatter that would happen if some of these things weren't involved. If these guys were just on some random team together who might not win a championship and there is no force over them like a LeBron James, then I would say probably. But
Mm.
I think the reputation of the team and their goals and what's going on, I think a lot of that stuff is put to rest and they just go in and play basketball. I mean, if they have problems, it wouldn't surprise me, but I don't think it's going to go that way. I People are right to be a little concerned, but I just don't think that's how it's going to go. I think that team is going to play well together because of all the veteran experience and because of what they know is at stake. So it's going to be an experiment for sure. But I think a lot of that stuff, the small problems and the ego problems, some of that stuff is either just going to be handled on the court or squashed in the locker room beforehand, or LeBron will handle it with a conversation or something. Like I just don't see it escalating the way other teams might have it escalate, given the circumstance of the Lakers this year.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed in my years of watching basketball is that the older players become, the lesser the impact the ego has. So I think if these guys would have came together 5, 6, 7 years ago, would have been major issues. but they're older now. So I think everyone knows how to put their egos in check. Rondo has the benefit of playing with KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen when he first came into the league. He was the fourth person in that cog. So he understands how to suppress himself to make the team better. He learned that early on, so I think he'll be fine with that. As everyone has said, the biggest question mark will be Westbrook. And not to say that he's a bad teammate, but he he does his own thing. So that's where I think the biggest adjustment will come. And I think Rondo will actually be able to help Westbrook with that, seeing that one, Rondo's been in this system before, and two, also, let's not forget Westbrook's playing at home for the first time in his career, so this will settle him down a little bit as well. So I think it's going to be good. The questions are valid, but I think everyone's going to get along quite well. Even with throwing Carmelo Anthony in the mix, of course LeBron will be able to help him. With any transition he has to make. So I think
Dude,
it's going to be
it's
good.
it's it's nothing but big personalities and big kind of like generational players. Like Dwight Howard at one point was massive. Carmelo at one point was massive.
Mhm.
LeBron still massive. Westbrook massive. AD massive. It's from top to bottom almost. I mean, almost. It's just big, massive personalities and like people who have at one time or another been dominant. And they've all decided to come together to play. I mean, Carmelo, he was like one of the last ones to the party, right? But these guys have done it before. I think they're going to do it again. And if they're healthy and if they can win games quickly, winning solves a lot of problems, anyways. So even if there is some animosity going into the season, if they can win, a lot of that goes away pretty quickly. Um, so I'm just it's a huge experiment, but I think it's going to have positive outcomes for them. So I'm excited to see it. I know you are.
Yeah, I am, man. Sorry to the rest of the NBA. The Lakers are going to be a big topic on our podcast this season, because to me, I think they're the most complete team I've ever seen put together in basketball. So it's going to be nice to watch them. The hard thing is we're on the East Coast, so we might have to stay up late to watch some of these games on the West Coast. But I'm pretty excited about them. And here we are again, still in this Laker kick. So this week the Lakers traded Marc Gasol um, to the Memphis Grizzlies, who are set to cut him, and he's apparently over in Europe with his family, still in Spain. If this is the end of Marc Gasol, how do you think his NBA career panned out?
Um, like not bad. Like I mean, it's like when you think Gasol. I mean, a lot of people just immediately think of his brother. No, with those Laker teams. But it's like kind of ironic that he ended up there as well for a
Hmm.
while, a stint. And um, I, I mean, there's nothing bad to be said about either one of them, especially not him. And with what he did for quite a while, those teams in Memphis, their play style and what they were known for, he's just has a reputation for being just an all around solid knowledgeable NBA player, and he's been in the league for a long time.
Right.
So he's done nothing but add to the family name and legacy, and I mean nothing but good things to be said for him from me. Like, it's not like I've followed like closely his career. But I mean, if you watch basketball enough, you definitely know who he is and what his game is about, and he's always done that. And like I said, nothing bad to be said about the guy. Nothing but praise and respect.
Oh yeah. So to me, he's constant. He's solid, like a Nikola Vucevic was for Orlando Magic, but only he was a better defensive player, which is why he won Defensive Player of the Year a couple of times. But he every night you knew what you were getting out of him. And yeah, he slowed down a lot in these last few years, but he actually, was able to win the championship with Toronto. So that kind of validated his career a little bit. Of course, he had a great, great international career with Spain, most of the time playing alongside of his brother. So there's no doubt in my mind that if this is it for him, 4 years from now, we'll see him in the Basketball Hall of Fame. Like, it's just, he's a lot for that.
For sure.
And
Hmm.
actually, I think Powell should be coming up very soon. I think Powell may be coming up next year. Um, because usually it's a 4 year. It used to be five, but now it's a 4 year gap. But both those guys will be in there, and it's a testament to their upbringing. I don't know how they learned the game. I don't know who trained those kids when they were younger, but kudos to them. Whoever got a hold of them in Spain, kudos to them because both those brothers turned out to be terrific NBA players, great international players, and great men. Because you don't hear anything bad about any of those guys. So if if this is the end for Marc Gasol, kudos. You had a fantastic run. Your jersey will be retired in Memphis. Really quick, Memphis has announced that they're going to retire their first two jerseys in franchise history. One of those is going to be Tony Allen, and the other one is going to be Zebo. So there's those jerseys will go up this season. So
That grit and grind team that set
right,
the tone for Memphis for a long time.
right. So they're going to
Um,
start recognizing those guys.
it's kind of ironic though, like some of the more, I guess, successful foreign players.
Mhm.
Uh, I kind of have like the same feeling about all of them. Like they're all extremely, it seems, respectful, and like there's nothing bad to be said about them. They've always conducted themselves in like the same general tone. Like I feel like that's why it's just like a representation of where maybe they come from
Mhm.
or the habits and things that they're used to. It's just it translates to where on our side we see no outside flaws. We just see people working on their game and always being respectful and having like this long career. It's just I don't know. It's just something I thought about when thinking about him and his brother Dirk and similar players, like the legacy they leave behind. I say a lot of the similar. I say a lot of similar things about them because they all kind of remind me of the same thing, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's all related, and it's funny that you bring that up, especially talking to our next topic because I told you some of the guys that were enshrined last night, and I forgot to mention Tony Kukoc, who was one of the
Oh,
first international players to come over. And the thing with Tony Kukoc was the Chicago Bulls when they drafted him, they saw him as the future past Michael Jordan, past Scottie Pippen. It didn't necessarily work out that way because, of course, Jordan retired and then came back, and then Pippen didn't leave. So Tony Kukoc actually was a six man off. He was the first man off the bench. He was a six man, but he had the talent to lead his own franchise. So Michael Jordan even said last night, um, and Scottie Pippen as well, that Tony Kukoc had made the biggest sacrifice on the team because he had superstar talent, but on that
mhm.
team he had to be the sixth man. So all those guys are related, even with him, Detlef Shrimp, Sabonis, Rick Smits, all those guys that opened the door for Powell, Mark, Dirk. Yeah, it's amazing. It's really amazing. And I think they said last night this is the seventh straight year where there's over 100 international players in the NBA. And considering there's only 400 some odd players in the
Wow.
NBA, that's a huge chunk. That's a huge chunk. So
That's a larger number than I would have guessed.
yeah, I believe they said it was 117. Don't quote me on it, but it was somewhere in there. But they definitely said it was over 100. So yeah, the NBA is full of foreign players, and it
Mhm.
all started with those guys. Um, and they have a great legacy, great legacy. So
Mhm.
I just mentioned Tony Kukoc. Other players that were enshrined were Chris Webber, Paul Pierce, Ben Wallace, and Chris Bosh. So tell me how you feel about those guys.
Well, I feel like they're all deserving of being there. There's, unfortunately, there is like I don't know as much. about a certain time in NBA history as others. There's a lot I'm missing in my knowledge. I'm not scared to admit that. Paul Pierce and like Chris Bosh are and Chris Webber. Those are the names. Like I know I've seen a lot of Pierce and Bosh. Um,
Hmm.
I've seen a little Webber. It's like, but I can't really speak to him with any kind of knowledge. Like I just can't. But I know Paul Pierce and Bosh, what they did in the time frame which I got to really pay attention and know what was going on. There's no doubt in my mind that those guys deserve to be there. I mean, championship caliber. Um, were shown to be able to lead their teams. Bosh, I know when he won his championships with Miami, he took a backseat to those guys, but it was for a team dynamic that obviously bred success and championships, and he showed up to that point that he was able to do it on his own anyways in Toronto. So, and I don't need to speak to I don't really think I have to explain why Pierce deserves to be on there with his championships and what he did over the length of his career, especially on some of those championship teams. Uh, how he was leaned on in some ways, like he was in a lot of ways the heart, and I mean him, Garnett, and Ray Allen, of course. Like it was that trio, and then Rondo came in later. But I mean, he was like him and Garnett, they were the go-to guys to be able to just get a bucket. Paul Pierce always made things look awkward, but he was just so reliable in so many ways. So in my eyes, both of those guys, and without really knowing too much, I'm not going to knock the other guys for being on the list. I think all of them deserve to be there. And um, yeah, what do you think?
Well, one of the hardest NBA players I've ever critiqued, as far as the one I've been the hardest on, was Chris Webber. But let me go back and say something. The Nate Smith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame is the Basketball Hall of Fame. So it covers high school, college, international, and pro level basketball. Okay. With that said, with that said, Chris Webber's short but impactful college career is the reason why I would say, okay, his NBA career was full of letdown. Let me explain. He was a super talented athlete. Mentally, he wasn't there a lot of the times. When either of his teams needed a big shot, but I'm going to say specifically on Sacramento because that's where he had his most success at, he would shy away from the moment. Okay. Even with Washington a little bit, he would shy away from the moment. Um, and it always rubbed me the wrong way because it's like, if you're going to be the guy, Mike Bibby, Jason Williams, Peja Stojakovic, they shouldn't have the ball in their hand the entirety of the fourth quarter. You need to have that. And it was always like he would run away from that moment. So that it always left a sour taste in my mouth about Chris Webber. Um, so I was against, just as I will be against and always against T Mac being in the Hall of Fame. I'm against Chris Webber being in the Hall of Fame. But I
Mm-hmm.
watched it. Um, and he's a great guy. He's done great things off the court for the community, for the youth. He's a great guy. He's a historian. Like he's great. It's nothing personal against Chris Webber. Just as a basketball player, I don't think he qualifies for the Hall of Fame, which we know is the weakest Hall of Fame in all of sports for someone to get into. So we do know that. But he gave a great speech last night, and he thanked my basketball idol last night, who helped present him to the Hall of Fame. So I was like, "Damn it, you're trying to get me to like you," you know. But he thanked Charles Barkley, so that was a neat little exchange they had. Charles was up there all night, but that's for another day. Um, Everything you said about Paul Pierce is 100% accurate. Just you can't say anything wrong about Paul Pierce. You just can't. Like he was almost a perfect NBA player. He was just a little slow. You said he was awkward. That was right, but he could still get to his spots. He could
Mm-hmm.
get to his spots, and he would kill you in the mid range. As far as Ben Wallace, ferocious, and was usually the smallest center on the court every night at like 6'8", 6'9".
I
You
forgot to
couldn't
even
tell it.
talk about Ben Wallace, and I could have talked
No,
about Ben Wallace. I forgot.
no,
Yeah,
you're
nothing
good.
bad
Yeah,
about him either. Like I remember him watching uh, the way the Detroit team would play, especially in the finals, how they dealt with those Lakers teams. Um,
mm,
yeah, I mean, you don't even see that kind of basketball like that grind anymore. Like kind of like what we talked about with Memphis earlier, how they played. You know,
right.
Detroit had that rough style basketball that Detroit was known for forever.
Mm,
So, real quick, not to cut you off, but I forgot I didn't even talk about Ben at all, and I have nothing but respect for him and that team and how they played, but especially the tenacity that he played with because, like you said, he was usually one of the smaller or the smallest center, one of the smallest centers, and he was in it every night, playing
right,
physical and hard, and he
right,
was successful, and his team was successful because of it.
right. I mean,
So,
ferocious. I've never seen. Hey, look, he's an old country Bama boy. I've never seen him back down from anybody. Okay, um, and he's only the second four-time Defensive Player of the Year winner. It's him and Dikembe Mutombo. They're in a class all by themselves. Okay, so definitely deserved NBA champion. Ben Wallace is one of the greatest defensive players I've ever seen in my life. And then we go to Chris Bosh. Um, his career was cut short due
mhm.
to blood clots, blood thinning, all that. Um, and you're right, he did sacrifice a lot for that team to win championships because Chris Bosh wasn't known as a great defender coming out of Toronto, and when he got to Miami, his defense just went to an all-time high. Okay, um, even to where LeBron and Wade. I say out of the three, Chris Bosh played the most defense out of the three. Okay, and could still pull up for the mid range, could pull up for three. Um, as his idol, Kevin Garnett, they're very similar. Uh, Nothing bad to say about Chris Bosh at all. And we know he's a sensitive guy, and that was portrayed in his Hall of Fame speech, which was one of the best I've ever heard, where he just talked about life and put things in perspective, things that we take for granted that are taken for us, like basketball, for instance, for him. Um, so it was a great night. And it's one of those nights that reminds me of why I love the sport so much. I shed a couple of tears. I feel like a bitch sometimes. I shed a couple of tears. But yeah, it was a great night. And those guys, outside of Weber, I will continue to say that those guys deserved it. Even the ladies, Lauren Jackson and Yolanda Griffin, who played in WNBA, well deserved, great players. I mean, it was a fantastic night, man. And then Bill Russell.
Bill Russell's in there twice now.
Right, Bill Russell going in as a coach, which I mean, he was the first African American coach in all the sports, and won championships as a player and a coach. So, like, he was playing and he was coaching and won a championship. How ridiculous is
Yeah, it's almost like what LeBron's doing now, a little different.
that? So, speaking of LeBron, so of course it was a Heat night. I didn't know Bosh was going to go last. I thought Bosh would go maybe second. I thought Pierce was going to go last because he's the most accomplished of all of them. So I thought Pierce was going to go last, but they had Bosh last. So I saw a lot of Heat dignitaries in the crowd, and I was like, I don't see LeBron. I wonder if LeBron's going to be there because I don't see LeBron in a lot of Hall of Fame stuff. I just don't. And then I
Hmm.
saw him, and I was like, holy shit! And they didn't make a big deal out of him being there. He was just in the crowd. They didn't flash on him a lot. They flashed on Wade more than they flashed on LeBron. So I thought that was neat.
Hmm.
Because he was there supporting Chris Bosh. Um, I thought that was really neat, and kudos to him for doing that because he doesn't do a lot of events like that. So that kind of meant a little bit to me, being a Heat fan, of course, and seeing the big
Hmm.
three all there again. So yeah, good night. It was a great night,
Hmm.
man. It was a great night. Oh, what else you got
Nice.
for us this week? Ask me about my players.
Uh,
What player you got for me?
okay, so
Oh God, sirens. Ah,
it's okay. Just something's on fire somewhere. Um, John Stockton, and would he be looked at? Do you think he would still have the legacy and maybe the stats without Karl Malone? And how much was at, was he as important to that team as Karl Malone, but mainly just like him and his legacy, I guess.
John Stockton was the most important player in the history of the Utah Jazz because Karl Malone was limited offensively. So it was because of John Stockton's wizardry with passing the ball that allowed Malone to get open and get easy buckets. Now, as Malone got older, he did develop his game more, but that was spearheaded by Stockton's wizardry as a point guard. Um, Knowing how he played, knowing how he made me pull hairs out of my head, knowing how much I hated him when I was a kid, and seeing how the game is now, he would be an absolute killer in today's game. Now we're talking about one of the all-time assist people in the history of the NBA, playing in
I
the
thought
late
he
'80s.
I thought
Go
he
ahead.
was all time assist leader.
I can't remember if someone's passed him or not, but I know if he's not one, he's two. But just imagine he's that playing in the '80s, playing in the '90s, with the game being as free flowing as it is right now. He would have shattered his own record if he was playing right. You know what I'm saying? Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, he was more important to that team than Karl Malone was definitely. He was the one who spearheaded everything. He was the one who brought the grit every night. He would get up in someone's face. He doesn't care if they were like 6'7", 6'8". He would get up in their face. John Stockton, as far as his tenacity, you know how you have that little dick in you, that tenacity that you have. He's kind of like that. You know, you got that little dick side to you. He's like that. So I think you would relate well to him if you were to watch him play back then, because both you guys are real feisty. If that makes sense.
Because I just like if you just look at it, look at him, or if you look at like some tape or some video, it's like nothing. It's like little glimpses. Nothing really flashes greatness or stands out. I think you have to take in like a whole body of work and then like watch like whole games to maybe
Hmm.
appreciate, I guess, how he played and his efficiency and I guess his IQ and his tenacity on both ends of the floor. I guess what made his legacy, but uh, like his efficiency and his IQ is, I guess. Can you like speak on that? Like, was he a great shooter? Like, did he just know how to run an offense like better
He
than
wasn't.
most? Like, what
He
was it
wasn't
that
the best.
stood out? I guess.
He wasn't the best shooter. Okay. So if you look at Steve Nash ran one specific offense very good, and he was kind of flashy with it. Where John Stockton didn't have to be flashy; it was just efficient. He got the ball where the ball needed to be. When he would come off the pick and roll, he would set the best pick you could get to free up Karl Malone, to free up Antoine Carr. Um, so he would sacrifice his body a lot, where Steve Nash really wouldn't do that. And Steve Nash wasn't a good defensive player. So offensively, they were similar outside of the flash, but I would compare him to Steve Nash offensively just because they were so good at what they did as far as passing the ball and getting the ball to the right spots. Um, but defensively,
Mm-hmm.
Stockton was far better, setting picks to get his big men open. I've never seen a guard do it since, to be honest with you. The 30 picks that
Mm-hmm.
John Stockton threw, like he would run into you and just yeah, he would put
Yeah,
his body on the line. Of course, no one plays like that anymore, but it was effective back in that time. But yeah, he wasn't a dead eye shooter. No. Now with that said, he did hit a couple of big shots in his career,
yeah,
but he wasn't like that. He was like in a mid 30% range for 3-point shooting, like 34, 35%. He was never up 38, 39, or 40%. No.
gotcha.
They had Jeff Hornacek for that.
Was he like a decent mid-range guy, or was he just not
He
super efficient at scoring the basketball? He was just good at running the offense.
he didn't have to score, but he was a decent
Mm.
mid range guy. But he didn't look for his shot at all first. No, he was
Just a
set every
true
just a true
true
point guard.
setup point guard. Yeah,
Right, right, right. But if he needed to make a big shot, he would make a big shot. But I don't think he ever averaged over 20 points in a career in a season for his career. I don't think he ever did that. He didn't have to.
I think statistically he's known for assist leading
Yeah,
and
and steals.
steals.
Hmm.
Like like you said, he was a bulldog on defense.
Right, right. But those teams always had so many offensive weapons that his offense really wasn't necessary to them winning or losing.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
He's part of that crew though that just had to play against Jordan.
Well, yeah, they went to back-to-back NBA finals.
Hmm.
They lost both times. I'm not gonna say they were Jordan's most serious threat, but they were a solid threat. I'll put it at that. I still think the '93 Suns was Jordan's biggest opponent because he had to average damn near 50 points a game to beat them, um, which is
Doesn't even
ridiculous.
sound real.
It's, dude, he averaged like 40. It's like 45 points a game to beat the Phoenix Suns. Like he
Hmm.
had to do that much to beat them. But Utah, considering that he played them back to back, considering at that time it was towards the end of his career, Utah was a pretty nice threat. They're a pretty nice threat, man. So yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Okay.
So all right. So we are gonna wrap it up for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Hardwood Nations podcast. Be sure to like us on all our social media channels: YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all at the Hardwood Nation. So give us likes, subscribe, give us shares, shout out our content. I want to shout out our latest subscribers. We had a few this past couple of weeks, so thank you so much. And we will see y'all soon.
Thank you.